Today's webinar, Trusting Relationships. It's being presented by Leah Davidson, a local system manager from the Arlington Early Intervention System. My name is Dina Buck. I work with the Integrated Training Collaborative at the Partnership for People with Disabilities here at Virginia Commonwealth University. And I am just so glad that we are going to have this hour together to learn and talk and reflect on our work as we build and cultivate and support relationships with one another and the families that we get to know and come into partnership with. And I'm just really glad that we're having this time to talk about this important topic. Leah and I serve on a work group that is looking into how we can better support early intervention providers to support their needs in the early childhood mental health arena. And through that work, we got to talking about this topic of trusting relationships and how vitally important they are. And then we had work underway in Virginia already to bring Dr. Mona Delahook to Virginia to do a webinar a couple of weeks ago. She did her first webinar, and then she's going to be doing another one in April. And then it just seemed like the moons were aligning, that we were going to have this opportunity to have another topic that just went so well together. And we were going to have this chance to talk some with Leah about a topic that was just so near and dear to her heart and to her work in Arlington, but also to her professional training and to her areas of interest related to early childhood mental health and infant mental health. So we were just really grateful that she was willing to share her expertise with us today. And so I will turn the program over to her in just a minute. She is involved with our endorsement process in Virginia for our infant mental health endorsement process, and she can tell you some more about that. But she does serve as a local system manager and has done that for several years. She can tell you more about the work that she does in that capacity. She is an infant mental health endorsed candidate at level 2 and is working at her endorsed level 3 experience at this point. She is actively involved in a number of initiatives in Virginia in the early childhood world, in early childhood mental health. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn the program over to our speaker for today, Leah Davidson. Leah?
Thank you, Dina. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. I am super excited to be here to be talking about this topic of trusting relationships. And yes, Dina's right. I have been a local system manager for all of 3 years, which is not a lot. I see some of you that have joined the room I know have been doing this much longer. Before I was a local system manager, I was a service coordinator, and before that I was in graduate school. I'll tell you a funny story that relates to this topic. When I was in grad school, I received my master's degree in marriage and family therapy. That was my degree. So you would think that I would have come to early intervention with the initial mindset of relationships first. But I didn't, because even in the family therapy world, we are still focused on individuals. Generally, even if a couple is the client, we're still looking to this person and that person and trying to help resolve individual issues. And so it wasn't until I got into early intervention that I was pushed to see our work as really utilizing the relationships between us and the family and the relationships between the family members as the vehicle for change. Now, it could be that I just didn't get it when I was in school, but I think if I spoke to my colleagues there, they would agree that that the field is just still kind of at the individual level. So today, I come to you, and I'm so grateful to get to talk to y'all about this thing that is very near and dear to my heart, which is trusting relationships. Trusting relationships. So today we're going to talk about the value of relationships and specifically the value of adult-to-adult relationships in the lives of our babies, in the lives of our children. I'm going to talk about the impact of relationships on not only the life of the child, but also the sort of perception of the child about themselves and about the world around them. And we're going to talk about our role. So we're going to kind of define the task, and then we're going to talk about how can we do it within our role as either early interventionists or early childhood teachers, whatever your role is. So first of all, let's just think for a second about relationships. I love this quote. You are you and I am I, and what lives between us is something else altogether. I like this quote because it reminds me that the thing that is between individuals who are regularly together has a life all its own. It's like a living, breathing thing. The relationship between me and my colleague is it's not just me and it's not just her or him, but it's the thing that happens when we're together. It's what lies between us. And that thing, that relationship between adults has an impact on the lives of our children. So if I'm a teacher and I am co-teaching, the relationship between me and that co-teacher is important in the life of that child. So before we move on, I just want you to think for a second. Think about your own life and raise your hand. I love the raise your hand tool. If you can think of examples of both good relationships between adults, this is like when you were a kid, good relationships between adults and not so good relationships between adults. Raise your hand if you can just come up with examples. You don't have to share them, but I just want to see if, yes, people are raising their hands. Yes, that's good. That means I'm not on mute, because how embarrassing would that be? And it also means that I'm making some sort of sense, which is also quite good. Yeah, so we know that the relationship is important. We could talk forever, all day long, about how to establish good relationships. But I wanted to, since we just had the pleasure, some of you, myself included, had the pleasure of listening to Dr. Mona Delahook do an awesome webinar a couple of weeks ago. I want to reintroduce one of her tools, or one of her concepts, because I think it's such a fabulous tool for starting out on a good foot with relationships. It's the zone idea. I love this idea because it's simple. It's just 3 things. Sometimes when it's like more than 3 things, I get confused. This is 3 things, and they're color-coded, even better. So these are our zones of regulation. The green zone, I'm in a calm state. I'm going to be able to accept influence from other people even if I don't agree. I'm going to be able to learn. I feel pretty safe. If I'm in the red zone, I'm going too fast. I am probably perceiving that something is dangerous, even if it's not in my thinking brain. It's in my primitive brain, and so I am highly activated. I'm on high alert. And if I'm in the blue zone, maybe I was up all night with a crying baby and I'm just real tired, or maybe I'm sick, or maybe I'm frozen. Maybe I'm impacted by trauma, and so I'm actually sort of in this state of immobility. I talk about these because if we can learn to read these zones first in ourselves, then in another person, we are on our way to the start of a good relationship. That is like the foundation. Can I know myself, and can I see where they are at? Especially in the professional world, people are not always in the green zone when we're with them, right? So we will talk about reading people's cues and sort of being in relationship with people in terms of these zones throughout this webinar today. So the value of relationships. If we think about it, we all start out in relationships. We are literally grown inside of another person's body. That's like as close as you can get, right? And then we come out and we kind of need to like stay on that person for what feels like 18 years. We grow and separate and grow into our own person, but we do it within the context of relationships. Some of us are really aware of those relationships and love other people and are very extroverted. Some of us are more introverted and love our separation more than our togetherness. Regardless of where we lie on that spectrum, You can't get away from relationships with other people. They're everywhere. Even if you're kind of a loner, you still have to talk to the people at the grocery store if they're for your oranges and your apples, and you still have to, most of us go to school, most of us have a job where we have to interact with other people. And when our lives end, it is our relationships that contain our footprints. It is the people that we impacted that keep us. They're all around us from the very beginning. And so I think this is such good news because it means that we have something to do, another thing to do to help our babies, to help our kids, is that we can set up a bunch of stable relationships all around them to help them stay kind of within a shelter of safety. Relationships as shelter. This is one of my favorite metaphors. So just a reminder, red, green, blue, figure out where you're at. I have this on there just to remind me of these things as well. So I want to talk about this metaphor of relationships as shelter. So when a child is in an environment, maybe it's school, maybe it's home, maybe it's somewhere else that they are regularly, the relationships between the adults in those environments matter. If they are strong and healthy, it's like the walls of that house are strong and that child can lean on those walls. If the relationships are frayed, or worse, if they're kind of disastrous, if they're dangerous, that is not going to be safe. Those walls are going to be flimsy and potentially unpredictable. So that child is going to experience sort of a sense of fear or not unsafety. That's not a word, I just made it up. I want you to think for a second about, just for, you don't have to share it, but for a second, think about this as it applies to your work. Start like combing through your mind about your relationships with colleagues. What do you do, or have you ever noticed if you've walked into a home, if you're in early intervention or healthy families and you've walked into a home and you feel the tension between the parents or the parent and the child care provider or the parent and the nurse or just generally the adults in the home, or yourself and the family. I know I've felt that. All of that contributes to that child's sense of how competent, how secure, how predictable are the adults in this environment. What does it take to have a healthy relationship? If we wanted to build a shelter that was strong, what does that take? What do you guys think it takes to have a healthy relationship? Use your chat box and tell me what you think it takes to have a healthy relationship between you and another adult. Trust. Corey says trust. Dana says respect and responsiveness. Trust and communication, empathy and respect. These are great answers. Yep. Honesty, respect, communication, communication. Yeah. Trust and communication. Trust means that you feel safe with that person. Communication means it's easy to exchange ideas and feelings, right? I had a wonderful professor once who kind of, someone said boundaries. I was just going to go there. That was Jeannie Vassar, thank you. Boundaries, vulnerability, and then the next one is vulnerability. That's brilliant. The two core components in any adult-to-adult healthy relationship are all the things you said. To sum it up, it's warmth and boundaries. Or as my wonderful professor used to say, warmth and demand. The word demand is a little harsh for me, especially because I am something of a demanding person sometimes, and so I shy away from that word. I like structure or boundaries better. So that's what we're generally going for when we're starting a new relationship with an adult, is to feel out how can we get to warmth and structure, warmth and boundaries. So now we're going to think more deeply about this. Think of yourself as a child in a shelter of relationships, school, home, other kids' houses, camp, whatever it was. What was that shelter made of? How secure were the walls? And how much shelter did it give you from the storms of life, from the emotional storms of life? And I want you to, if you can do it briefly in the chat box, just share a couple of examples. And I have a couple in case the chat box is silent, but I want to hear yours. I'm more interested in yours than mine. I see someone's typing, so I will wait. I will be patient and wait. Oh, Corey says that her shelter was made of love, and love is so resilient, isn't it? That's like, to me, that sounds like the walls were made of something that you could push out, but then it would bounce back and be its old reliable self again. Parents were available. Yep. Because they were freed up. They weren't constantly probably, in anxiety about their relationship. Home, I was at my cousin's house growing up, full of laughter and ease. Mom protected me. Yeah. My shelter had a lot of openness. Everything was up for discussion so we could understand what the boundaries were and why. Neighborhood was safe. These are really good examples. Because neighborhood, that's another example of relationships between adults, right? What happens if you hate your neighbor? Or if you're afraid of your neighbor? Or if you're just generally afraid of other adults because of your own experiences? Our kids pick up on that, as we all totally know. School teachers were supportive. I'll give my quick example. I grew up next to a huge family. To me it was huge because my family was small, but this family that was 2 doors down from me was pretty big. And there were 3 generations of adults in that family. And they were the family that would take in all the stray children, myself included, when one of their parents, the non-working parent, had to work a little bit. So my mom would have to go work in an office for 2 hours, and I would just get sent over to the neighbors. This would have been horrible if I didn't like those neighbors, but I loved them because they created, unwittingly, this wonderful environment where the adults were just so reliable. They were always making something or doing something. The kids had free reign to go anywhere in the house. And I especially remember Grandma. Grandma was like old. And when I say old, I mean like 95 or 100. She was really old. She sat on a throne in the top of the house, like in the top floor of the house, and the kids were allowed to go up any time and visit Grandma. And Grandma was extremely respected. And that's just an example of how the adults just loved each other. They had a hierarchy. They were very respectful of each other, and they handled whatever craziness that the children could dole out. So these are really good examples. So if we can think about that, if we can think about healthy relationships as kind of a structure for safety for children, what's our job there? Like what does it look like when the structure isn't so good? And what's our job when we are building relationships as professionals? Because we don't want to get in there and create tension, right? But sometimes tension just happens. So we'll talk about that. Let's talk about what it's like when it doesn't go so well. Aww, isn't this cute? This is in here because I think this baby is exemplifying what it feels like when the world is unpredictable. Now, of course, we know that somebody snapped a photo of this baby and it was just itching its eyes. I think it's a girl. But that little face is what I think sometimes our kids feel like when the world gets swirly and overwhelming and tense. So let's take an example. I love this picture of a little girl. I'm going to use these fancy technical tools to draw a picture called a genogram. I'm going to draw a really simple genogram. A genogram is just a visual representation of a family and the relationships between people. So to give you a little lesson on my super fancy drawing, squares are boys, circles are girls. All right, so I'm going to use the highlighter that is yellow. Yep. And draw a little picture. So this little girl goes to preschool at a school. And she has two parents. She lives with her mom and her grandma, and she has two teachers that interact with her most often. So let's see, we've got, that is mom, and that is mom's mom. And then mom has a dad, but he is separated from her mom. So this is this little girl's mom here at the bottom. And as I draw this other square, this mommy is separated from the little girl's daddy. I'm going to use the pointer tool here for a second. Neither of these separations cause tension. So this was an amicable separation for this woman and her partner. Also amicable separation for this woman and her partner. So no real tension here. Okay. So now I'm going to draw the little girl. All right, and so we've got this little girl way down at the bottom. There she is. We've got the school that I'm going to put up here. And the relationship where there is tension is between the school and mostly the mom. So you see those squiggly lines? These little squiggles here represent tension. Tension, tension, tension. Not only is there tension between the school and the grandma and the mom, but there's also a whole heap of tension between the school and the little girl. So the story is that this little girl is driving the school, this little girl is driving them nuts. And the feelings are she is active all the time. She doesn't sit at circle time. She's 3 1/2. She's barely potty trained. She is wants to be friends, but often takes toys, and is just really struggling at school. And her teachers are often frustrated at her. And then what's happened is the teachers have made attempts to reach out to grandma and mom, but the interactions have been kind of tense. They've been sort of unsuccessful. The teachers have tried to do things like call them at lunchtime just to give them an update, to tell them how the little girl did during the day so they know it before they get home. They have tried to call the mom and the grandma in for meetings, and so they do all this work to set up these meetings, and then they have to be canceled at the last minute. Mom and grandma both feel that the little girl is pretty compliant at home and it doesn't do well in school. They've referred to her before as a poor student. She's 3 1/2. Often grandma will say that the little girl acts just like the mom did when she was her age, and the mom really struggled in school. And so that creates a lot of tension here, because who wants to be told that they were a poor student and now their daughter is a poor student? Anyone? No, I didn't think so. So there's all kinds of tension. So as we look at this example, what messages might this little girl be getting from the adults that are most important in her life? Let's start with the school. She goes every day. Things don't go so well. What messages do you think that she's getting about herself? You go ahead and use the chat. She's bad. They hate me. She's naughty. She's trouble. Yep. Teachers don't like her. Yes. Raise your hand if you ever felt like a teacher didn't like you. I'm raising my hand. Remember that hand raising thing? Oh, I'm so happy I'm not the only one. I for sure had times when I felt like a teacher didn't like me. And when I felt like that, those were the times that I remember. I don't really remember being 3.5. That's like elementary school. Not that it's not bad then, but at least I had some sort of schema for life then. This is a 3.5-year-old who feels like the school is not a comfortable place, right? That she's annoying, that the teachers don't like her. So does this mean that it's all the teacher's fault? I'm asking. Use the chat box. Is this all the teacher's fault? Nope. That's right. Exactly. No, it's not all the teacher's fault. Let's now shift our thinking and think about what messages might she be getting from her grandma and her mom. She goes to school every day. The relationship between the teachers and her parents is not great. Might she be sometimes overhearing her grandma talk about her mom? What messages is this little girl getting? Yeah, mixed messages, negative messages. She's damaged, right. There's no hope for her changing. I love that. And I'm wondering if one reason she might be getting that message of there's no hope for change is because day after day she goes back to school and everything is the same. When we think about kids and adults, what do 3.5-year-olds really want adults to think about them? I see people are typing, so I'm going to be quiet and wait. Yes, Annabelle says they're the greatest thing. Right. They're awesome, that they're adored, that they're worth cherishing, that they are special super kids, that they're the best, that they're lovable and fun. Right. That's right. That's what our little guys want, nothing more than to please us. They do. And they want it the most when they're acting the worst. That's the main trick of parenting and caring for children, is that children need us the most when they're struggling the most. And a lot of times the way children show us struggle is by acting in ways that we don't like. And it goes round and round again in this awful cycle. My guess is that every teacher and every parent seeks to do that for every child. Every teacher and every parent wants to adore the kid. They want to make that kid feel special. They want to make that kid feel safe and loved unconditionally. But these things, I'm trying to use the pointer tool, and I'm succeeding. These things, this tension, these situations get in the way of that. Who's responsible for leading the change when it comes to adults and kids? Who's got to lead the change? For this to get better, who has to act different? Yep, we do. Womp womp. That's why parenting's hard, because we have to be different. Let's look down at the red, green, and blue zone at the bottom of this. Little picture. One of the questions I think that teachers could ask is, what zone is this mom in, or grandma, whoever it is, to pick up and drop off when they drop this little girl off? What are the signs we could look for? What are some of the signs? If you're a teacher or you're in early intervention and you come in contact with a parent, what signs can you look for about what zone they're in? In a rush to get in and out and not really present, right? Body language, eye contact, How hairy do they look? Yes. I can tell you as a parent, for the first 3 years of my child's life, 4 years maybe, I was in the red zone every single time I dropped her off. Because I was afraid she would cry. I wondered what the teachers thought of her. I felt like judged by all the other parents. I was also consistently late to work. Sorry guys, for those of you who work with me. Consistently late to work because I had a hard time with drop-off. That was hard for my daughter and I. And I think that is, had the teachers really wanted something out of me at that moment, I wouldn't have been able to give it. Okay, so I'm going to move on from this slide. Let's think of some work examples. Think of your own role. Oh, but I don't want to miss this awesome comment from Beth and Kyla. It sounds like this situation, they probably need to have a chance to talk at a different, more relaxed time about expectations. Yeah, that's rule number one that I've learned. Never try to have a conversation when you're rushing out the door with anyone in any facet of life. And there's no rushing out the door worse than drop off. I haven't experienced any rushing worse than that. Yes, thank you for that. So let's think about our work. Think of an example from your work where you have noticed or you have actually been in a tense relationship with another adult when both of you were trying to impact the life of a child. So this is like you are a provider in early intervention, or you're a center director, or you are consulting with Child Find or a special education on behalf of a child. If you can think of a time when relationships between adults were tense, what were some of the ripple effects that you remember? And once again, I have examples, but I'm interested in yours. Dina says, didn't listen very well. Yeah, listening gets difficult when tension crops up between adults. Not feeling competent in my work due to strained relationships. I know I've been there, and I hope, Lord, I hope it's not just Dan, Bill, and me. I think that is a very common ripple effect, that it can really tank our confidence. No follow-through or buy-in to the conversation, and just general anxiety, got frustrated when working with that person in other situations. Right. So I think a lot of these examples are probably related to when you were in a tense relationship with a parent or a caregiver. Yeah, I think that's very, very common. What about when the relationships between other adults were tense? Like, think about our kids in early intervention that are medically very fragile. Nurses and doctors and schools, and think about when that doesn't go that well. What happens then? I see some people are typing. Yeah, the health of the child can be impacted. That's right, because if we've got two adults, one parent and one healthcare professional working to keep that baby eating and breathing and things, if that relationship isn't going well, things can kind of fall apart. Information that is very vital can be misunderstood and not delivered in the correct way. The parents are more focused on survival-related needs than deeper things. What a good point that is. Has anybody, raise your hand, if you're in early intervention, have you ever worked with a family where instead of, not intentionally instead of, but just instead of enjoying the child, the parent just kept the child alive? Raise your hand if you've ever been in that situation. I'm raising my hand. Right. Yeah. And that obviously there's an impact there on the relationship between the child and the parent. But I know there are situations that I've been in where there were other adults in that situation, including me, who probably could have built something around that, who probably could have related to that parent about that. But sometimes it's just hard to bring those things up. Creates tension, and family might not follow through with medical advice. Family might lose hope when they cannot trust their providers. Yeah, that's right. All of that is absolutely right. I want to, before we move on from the slide, and as we continue to kind of mull through some of these examples, I want to bring back a concept that Dr. Mona Delahook brought us during her webinar on February 22nd, which was how incredibly, amazingly, vitally important it is to enjoy our babies. How important it is to enjoy our babies for exactly who they are right now, today. Every child needs that. Sometimes that's hard enough with a typically developing child, but when you've got a baby with very special needs, it's even harder. And so I think one of the windows that we can open through our relationships with parents is the possibility that that is possible. Is the idea that children, no matter who they are, no matter what level of ability they have, no matter what they were born with, are exactly right as they are. That there's no such thing as a wrong child. And that rightness, that perfectness, that's what we need to enjoy, because that's the thing that's going to send the messages that we want to send to the baby. And when we slowly use that relationship with that adult, with that primary caregiver, to kind of open that window, we may be sort of unintentionally or intentionally giving that child more of that enjoyment with the parent. I am certainly not saying that we're going to push joy on any parent, because if you're stressed and tired and you have a baby that keeps you up all night every night for 5 years, somebody pushing joy on you might not feel so good. But we can model enjoying the child, and we can give permission for parents to enjoy children exactly the way they are right now. What about the child? This segues into another sad little child. We've got a lot of sad babies in this webinar, so hopefully we'll get to a happy baby at the end. So our kids with special needs especially, but also kids where there's just a lot of tension going on in their lives, kids can get lost in the swirling demands of a very family who's working so hard to care for them. Does this resonate with anybody, like anybody that works with kids with special needs? We are so invested in milestones, and milestones are important. Milestones are how we measure kids, right? That's how we measure that like we're doing our job. But sometimes the tension between adults, or the anxiety between adults, or the miscommunications between us and other adults and parents can swirl up so much that we forget to take the child's perspective. One really easy way to remember to take the child's perspective is to ask yourself, or if you're brave enough, i.e., if you feel like your relationship with the parent can handle it, asking yourself or the parent, what would she say if she could tell us right now? Or what message do you think we're sending her right now? Speaking for the baby, trying to get the parent to speak for the child. But if we've got tension between the adults in the child's life, that's going to be really hard to do because of what I just said before. Bringing up difficult topics is only going to be successful in a trusting relationship. So if we are already not in a trusting relationship with the most important caregivers in that child's life, we're going to lose opportunities to help the most important grown-ups in that baby's life take their position, take the baby's position. One of the most fascinating things I think about babies and about little kids is that they begin to perceive themselves right away. That we are constantly teaching them about themselves all the time. No pressure, right? Once again, it's so easy to raise kids and teach kids, isn't it? Just kidding. It is. They're sponging up our reactions to them constantly, and then building a working perception of themselves. I heard a great story once where there was a baby that had been neglected, had not gotten a lot of feedback from the adults in his environment, and showed signs early on, like before 12 months, that he sort of didn't know he existed. That's how deep it gets. We are the ones that actually teach kids that they exist at all, that they're not just like a figment, which I think is really interesting. So, because we know we have this huge impact on all the babies and all the children, what can we do? What are some actionable things that we can do? We can see our clients as competent individuals who may be struggling. This is hard. This is hard. It's especially hard when we have high caseloads and when we're stressed and when the struggle that someone's having is showing up as behavior that we find annoying. And the fact that we're annoyed by clients, and FYI, the fact that we're annoyed by kids does not mean we are bad people. It just means that human behavior is unfolding. But the good thing about being human is that we've got this awesome prefrontal cortex, this thinking brain, that we can use to kind of break that stuff down and get past it. If we see our adult clients, our parents, our teachers, our caregivers as competent folks who struggle from time to time, that will model those folks and us seeing children as competent kids who may be struggling, instead of seeing them as defined by a diagnosis, bad kids, or defined by milestones. And when I say defined by milestones, I mean we don't want to send a 9-month-old a message, I am not going to love you until you start babbling. Woo! Nobody wants to send that message. And nobody intentionally sends that message, but when we miss the enjoyment of our babies and we just push for milestones, we kind of send that, right? So, defined by a diagnosis. Raise your hand if you have ever thought, and this is a tough question, please just know that I'm raising my hand high here. Raise your hand if you have ever thought or you've heard someone else think out loud, well, she has X, and so blank. Examples, well, she has autism, so she's never going to be happy, successful. Fill in any words you want. Well, he's in foster care, so he's going to suffer. It's this thing that we are almost, it seems that we're programmed to do, to categorize things, but it has this unintended consequence of us mentally giving up on the other person. Well, he has sensory needs, so he really needs to be away from his typically developing peers, because he shouldn't be with them because he'll bother them, and the list can go on and on and on. So it's that when we do that, we are fully defining a person by the thing they struggle with. So I struggle with time management. What if, as you can tell, because it's 12:43 and I'm still blabbing about this, what if, like, if all of the people I work with defined me as a time management struggler, I would not have a job. I am lucky that the people around me don't define me by that. I found the more I understand what drives the behavior, I'm reading Beth and Kyla, the workings of the brain, the primitive brain, the fight, flight, freeze reactions, the more compassion I have and the less annoying the behavior is. Beautifully said. Yes, that's exactly right. When we can understand brain science, it's a huge door open to our compassion than when we just look at the behavior. Behavior is annoying. Neurology is not annoying, right? Right. Okay, so here's some actionable things. Relationship versus control. If you're in early intervention in Virginia, you have no doubt had at least some training on coaching. The Melissa Sheldon, Dathan Rush coaching Bible, right? Coaching in early childhood. And so you've heard choose relationship over control. There's a page in that book that has a whole thing on why we choose relationship over control. And the basic reason is because that's how people learn. That's how people change. Adults change their behavior within the context of a trusting relationship. Kids change their behavior within the context of a trusting relationship. So we're all on the hook for this. So here is an example of somebody who is choosing control over a relationship. And by the way, if I didn't know any of this, I would love to choose control over a relationship because it's easier. Because number one, I like control. It makes me feel safe. Number two, I don't want to sit in the uncomfortable. But I chose this job. And so if I want to impact change, if I want to really make a difference in people's lives, I have to choose relationship over control. So I'll just read this out. I think what your son needs is a better routine. It seems to me that he lacks understanding about what comes next in his day. For next week, fill out this routine chart, and I can show you how to use it with him so that he gets more of like a heads up when it's time to do the next thing. So we can ask ourselves, who is making the decision about what to do? Now I'll ask, use the chat thing. Who's making the decision? Yep, not the parent, that's right, the provider. Who's doing all the talking? The provider. Who's making the plan for the next visit? The provider. And what message is the parent receiving about him or herself right now? I see people typing. Not qualified. Provider is the expert. You didn't do the right thing. Thank you for bringing it right down to brass tacks. You didn't do the right thing. Exactly. She's not doing it right. I'm not the expert. Your parenting is inadequate. Another brass tacks comment. Exactly. Your parenting is inadequate. Parents feeling judged. A major barrier to trusting relationships, right? Did this provider intend to be judgy? No. She's trying to help, or he. They're trying to help the situation. But unfortunately, the way they're trying to help is controlling. It is telling another equally competent adult what to do. No one likes that, right? Relationship control. So now we can look at relationship first example. I heard you say that he seems upset when you try to get him to stop playing and come to dinner. What have you tried in the past to help him feel more calm during this time? Now, if I have any of my coaching gurus listening, I fully admit that this could be better. But it is at least a little better than the first example because we don't know any of the answers to the first three questions here. We don't know who's making the decision about what to do. We're not there yet. We don't know who's doing all the talking. This is the beginning of a conversation. And we don't know who's making the plan for the next visit because, once again, this is the beginning of a conversation. This is an open door where the other one was a closed door. So in this one, what message is the parent receiving about him or himself? Yeah, Course says the example shows that parents are trying different things. Right, there's an assumption that you've tried something, that this is not, we're not having this session in a vacuum, and that this has been going on since before I came here, and you've tried some things to intervene. It's fostering problem solving. It sends the message that I know what's best for my child. Validating different things. Yeah, there are different ways to get to the same outcome. It's encouraging. The provider acknowledges that they heard the parent has a problem. Exactly. It's more collaborative. It's more like, I'm the expert on child development, and you're the expert on your child and your life. And those sets of expertise are equally valuable. Safety first. Here come the zones again. So, one of the things I think that we can we can know is that if we're in a conversation like that, or anything, if we're with a parent and we're getting signs that they are in the red zone, we can say in our mind to ourselves, she is scared, or he is scared. He doesn't feel safe. And so whatever it was that you had to say about whatever thing, I don't know what it was, maybe it's torticollis, maybe it's feeding, whatever it is, maybe it's behaviors and how to manage them, it is not as important as your relationship with that parent, because the relationship is the vehicle for change. The information isn't. We could all go out and read a textbook on speech therapy, but I need a relationship with somebody to actually get things done in my own house. So move away from problem solving into relationship building in whatever way that works for you. That just might be, whew, is it hot enough for you outside if it's right in the beginning? It might be, I'm so glad to see you and Johnny today. Right now I'm more interested in how you are doing. It might be, tell me a time when you and Johnny did something that you both enjoyed. If you're getting the sense that they're in the red zone because of us, that's definitely a time to just move back to rapport building. And it might be because we have something bad to tell them, that maybe it's an intake and we're there to tell them their child is delayed. That would put many of us in the red zone. If you feel like they're in the red zone because their bottom level of Maslow's hierarchy, food, water, shelter, safety, is not met, that's something else altogether. And that is more important, again, than whatever we had to say. The beautiful thing about early childhood and early intervention is that nothing we say, unless it's a life or death situation, is crucial. We do not have any crucial information. We just don't. We're not here to save lives. We're not first responders. Nothing we have to say is crucial. So, timing. If nothing we have to say is crucial, then we have this beautiful gift of time that we can take advantage of. So we can know what we want to say, but we can give it when the individual is in the green zone. So remember, the green zone is when I and the person with me are in a place where we can accept influence from each other. So if I'm with a parent and I have something to tell them, I want to tell it to them when they're going to be able to hear it, when they're going to be calm enough to accept something, even if that's maybe wasn't their first thought. I'm also going to deliver it in a way that builds on what they already know. Because of what somebody said before, I can't remember who it was, that we need to assume that somebody already knows something, that there's no such thing as empty vessels. We are putting information into someone who is already full of knowledge. And maybe they're overflowing. Maybe this is not the right time, because that bathtub that it's filled with information is full, and our drop will crack the side of it. That's why we need to be reading the zones. And if we can't read it, we can absolutely ask. Ask yourself, does the information weighing on you have to be shared today? If so, find a strengths-based way to share it and tell the parent that you're here to help no matter what. I'm behind you no matter what you decide to do is a real relationship strengthener. So what are some things that you have said to parents that are relationship builders, relationship strengtheners? Michelle, I see your question. I'm going to let people respond with some tips on what they say to strengthen relationships, but I will answer your question. Johnny lights up when he sees you. You have good instincts. Love that. Love that, because that really sends a message of value. Like, I value you. I value your, I'm watching you do something and I'm in admiration about it. Your expertise on your relationship with your child is just as important as my knowledge about child development. You're so good at Y, and Z? Yes. You really know how to read your child's cues? These are awesome. I want to get to Michelle's question of, do you have any more tips on how to recognize if a parent is in the red, blue, green, and how to judge the timing of important info? Well, let's talk about that. So how do you guys judge whether somebody is in a red, blue, or green zone? We've got a whole bunch of competent folks here on this call. What do you guys do? Observing the environment, Danville says. Yeah. So if things are just pure chaos, and this is not a chaotic family, let's say. I mean, some people just live in chaos, and that's just how they roll, and that's fine. But if you've got a parent that is generally not living in chaos, and all of a sudden you walk in and everyone is yelling and everything is crazy, you might check in on how they're doing. And if they say, oh my gosh, I'm super stressed, I just am blah, 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 that's the red zone. Sometimes facial expressions, ability to attend, yes, if they're able to sort of be with you or not be with you. You know, maybe they're right there with you, but today they're just kind of looking away and distracted. A perfect example is a parent who is looking at their phone during the session. I love my phone. If it got taken away from me, it would be like an appendage was off of me. And it's easy to judge other people when they're on their phones and you're trying to tell them something. But after you have the judgmental thought, which we all have, I can't believe she's on her phone during my important early intervention session, think about the zones. When are you on your phone? I sometimes get on it when I'm in the red zone just to escape. Sometimes I get on it when I'm so tired that all I can pay attention to is a screen. So that's another way to read it, is if the parent is really distracted by something, the phone is just one example, ask them how they're doing. Go back to relationship building. And yes, you also ask, can people switch in session from red, green to blue? Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. And if you were the one that made them switch, like if they were okay and then all of a sudden, after you say something, they stiffen up and their face goes blank, it's totally okay to say, how did that information I just gave you affect you? How did that feel to hear that? Because if you show them that it's all right for them to tell you the truth, that's another relationship strengthener. Sometimes we need our parents to actually kind of tell us about the zones. Zones are also something you can talk about with them frequently because it's going to help a lot if they can read it in their children. Some people may look tired, start yawning when they want to avoid engaging. Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right. So we have 3 minutes. I am going to go through my last 2 slides here. We're tasked with improving outcomes for children and families experiencing developmental differences, right? That's our job in early intervention. We can't fix that. Can you cure Down syndrome? Can you cure a speech delay? All on your own? Anyone? I don't see any hands raised. I can't either. But what we can 100% do is everything we can to establish a good, healthy relationship with the most important people in the child's life and share our knowledge through that trusting relationship. That's what we can do. Because this is the picture we want. Finally, it's a happy baby. We don't want everybody to smile all the time. That would be insane. But we want parents who feel competent. We want a baby who feels secure in the relationship that the adults in their life have created. And we, as early intervention, or whoever we are, we want to wrap ourselves around the family. Right? We don't want to intervene. We don't want to get in there and take away the baby and fix the baby and then give the baby back. We want to wrap around, we want to hold that family as a unique individual family that's already full of competence. So in our last 30 seconds, does anybody have any questions? Other questions?
And this is Dina. As you're typing, if you do have a minute that you want to type something, if we aren't able to get them all typed in here, I'm sure Leah would be happy to answer those after the webinar. But
Yep.
I'm going to go ahead and thank her right now for giving us such an inspiring message to reflect on today. Leah, this was a wonderful, wonderful webinar. So really thank you so much for sharing your expertise and your time with us today. Again, be on the lookout for the registration for Dr. Delahook's second webinar, which will be on March the 16th, which is a wonderful complement to this content. You can also go back and watch the first Dr. Delahook webinar, and those are nice complements to today's webinar. So thank you again for joining us. We look forward to continuing with this conversation. Thank you, Leah.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Bye-bye, everybody. Have a great afternoon.